Welcome to our guide on business licenses and permits in Japan. If you're planning to launch a business here, it's essential to understand the requirements for obtaining the right licenses and permits for your business. These are crucial steps to make sure that your business operates legally and smoothly in Japan. From food services to real estate, even e-commerce, each industry has its own specific requirements and application process for their licenses and permits. In this video, we'll provide a clear overview of the types of licenses and permits commonly required in Japan. We'll give a brief overview of each of the common licenses and permits, why they're important, share key steps in how you can apply these licenses and permits, as well as the costs involved in setting them up. Let's get started. Here's a quick overview of what you can expect to learn in this video. We will start by giving you a clear understanding on the business licensing process in Japan, helping you navigate the often complex regulatory requirements. Next, we'll explore the key differences between licenses and permits, terms that are often used interchangeably but have specific meanings in Japan's regulatory framework. We will also walk through the general application process so you know which step to follow when applying for the necessary approval, and we will also highlight the 5 most common licenses and permits required for businesses in Japan, including the food and beverage permits, registration for the travel agency, transportation service permits, real estate licenses, as well as alcohol sales licenses. By the end, you should have a comprehensive overview and ready to start your own business in Japan. Now, let me introduce our team. First, we have our co-founder, Tae-Jin Yoon. Born and raised in Japan, TJ brings years of experience in investment advisory and international relations. Fluent in both English and Japanese, he has guided over 25 companies and successfully managed 40 subsidy and loan applications in Japan. Tae-Jin is your go-to expert for navigating the complex setup requirements here in Japan. Next, we have Tyson Batino, our co-founder who specializes in revenue growth and advisory services. And finally, here's me, Heiken, the marketing manager and the content creator here at SmartStart Japan. I'm dedicated to bringing you insights on how to successfully launch your business in Japan. Now, let's take a closer look at the 2 key types of administrative approvals in Japan: permissions and licenses. A permission is basically an administrative act that temporarily restricts certain freedoms for public safety or order. So for example, activities like running a restaurant or a pawn shop are generally restricted, but with the proper application and approval, these restrictions can be lifted. These ensures that businesses meet the necessary safety and regulatory requirements before they operate. A license, on the other hand, is a specific type of permission under administrative law. It applies to activities that are generally prohibited until specific qualifications or requirements are met. For example, driving a car is typically restricted for public safety, but once you meet the necessary criteria, like passing a driving test, this restriction is lifted with the issuance of a driver's license. The key differences is that while a permission is given to specific types of businesses to operate, a license gives the right to operate to the person instead. So for example, a hairstyler or a hair salon will require a license, as well as things like a real estate agent will also need a license. In terms of the differences that business owners need to know, the main differences is just where you'll be submitting your documents to, but the application process will be similar whether you're applying for a permit or a license. While there are other types of permits and approvals in Japan, these 2 are among the most common and will provide you with a good understanding of how the regulatory system works here. So let's move on to the general application process on both permits and licenses. Although they are slightly different, the general process is the same. So the process involves 5 key steps. So the first one would be to determine your business type and licensing requirements. Start by identifying the types of business you intend to operate and the specific licenses or permits you'll need. This also involves determining the relevant regulatory authority for your industry, whether it is the local health department or the transportation bureau or another agency that will be responsible for your licenses or permits. Second is to register your business, if it's at all necessary. Some licenses require you that you have already registered your company first. This includes completing your company incorporation and make sure that your business objectives, as stated in the articles of incorporation, aligns with the licensing requirements. A good example of this would be the real estate businesses, where you will need a real estate licenses, and they will require you to have a real estate license to operate. 3 is to prepare your documents. gather all the required documentation, such as your articles of incorporation, your facility plans, or your proof of qualifications. If you're talking about licenses, the exact documents needed will vary depending on your industry type and the type of licenses or permits you are applying for. Fourth is to submit your application. Once your documentation is ready, file your application with the appropriate authority. Be sure to pay the required fees and meet any pre-approval conditions outlined by the regulatory body. And the final step often involves a facility inspections or a review process from someone of the relevant government agency. And if your application and your inspection meets all the necessary requirements, then you'll receive the license or permits required to begin operation. By following these steps, you can ensure a smooth application process and avoid unnecessary delays or complications. Next, we'll dive into the specific examples of how this process applies to some of the key industries in Japan. And finally, if your licensing requirements involve incorporating your business, we can help. At SmartStart Japan, we offer a free 30-minute consultation to guide you through the incorporation process and make sure your business is set up properly to meet all the licensing requirements in Japan. Visit our website at smartstartjapan.com to book your consultation today and take the first step towards establishing your business in Japan. First, let's take a look at the food and beverage permits. It's an important requirement for anyone who's planning to operate a restaurant, a cafe, or any other food-related business in Japan. Here's a quick breakdown of the steps involved. First is to actually contact your local health department for initial guidance. They will give you the details about the specific requirements for your area, as these can vary depending on your location in Japan. Once you have a good understanding of these requirements, you will have to gather the required documents next. Typically, these documents include your completed restaurant business license application form, a floor plan or the equipment layout diagrams for your restaurant and facility, proof of your appointed food hygiene manager's qualification, a water quality inspection report if your establishment uses well water or any other water tanks, a certificate of registration if you are opening as a corporation, and any other documents specified by your local authority. Once you have everything ready, file your application with the local health department and pay the necessary fees. Keep in mind that the application's fees varies by location, so check with your local authorities for specific, but in general, we'll give you an approximate number near the end of this video. After you have submitted your application, the health department will schedule an on-site inspection. During this visit, officials will verify that your facility complies with the hygiene standard, structural requirements, and equipment regulations. It's important to ensure your kitchen layout and equipment meet the necessary guidelines before this inspection. And that's it. If your establishment passes the inspection, you'll receive your restaurant business license. This process typically takes around 2 to 3 weeks from the application to issuance, and it's around valid for 5 to 8 years, after which you will need to renew your licenses again. And after obtaining your license, you also need to notify the local fire department and get a fire prevention manager to make sure compliance with their safety regulations for your restaurant. Next, let's take a closer look at the process for travel agency registration in Japan. So if you're planning to provide a domestic or international travel services, this registration is required. So here's how that process works. So again, start by determining the registration type. Depending on the types of travel you handle, the category is also different. There are mainly 3/4 types of categories. Type 1 travel agencies mainly handles domestic and international travel with the broadest operation scope. Type 2 agency focuses on domestic travel arrangement, and Type 3 is for smaller scale operation with limited travel services. And there's also regionally limited travel, which covers operations specific to a area within Japan. And this is important because your category determines the requirement and the authority you'll be working with. Next, you'll prepare the necessary documents, which typically includes a completed registration application form, a copy of your company's articles of incorporation, a certificate of registered matters, a business plan with organizational overview, a list of appointed travel business managers, your agency's standard terms and conditions, and any additional documents specified by your local authority. You will also need to schedule a pre-application hearing for some types of business, especially for Type 1 registration. This is conducted through the Japan Tourism Agency. And for other types of agency, contact for prefectural government office in your area. After that, you will submit your application with all the required documents with the appropriate authority. Again, Type 1 agency goes to the Japan Tourism Agency. Other types go to your local prefectural government office. And similar to the food and beverage license, your fee of registration will vary by location and registration type. For example, in the Fukuoka Prefecture, the fee is around 19,000 yen for travel agencies. And after that, you'll go through the review process and receive the registration notification if everything goes right. After you have received your registration notification, you are required to deposit a business security money or pay into a compensation business guarantee fund. This must be completed within 14 days of receiving the notification, and the amount of deposit depends on the scope of your business activity. Then you submit your proof of security deposit or guarantee fund contribution with the relevant authority to complete this step. And after everything, you can begin your operations as a travel agency in Japan. And it's worth noting that the exact requirements and procedures may vary slightly depending on the prefecture or the type of registration that you are going for. So always consult with the relevant local authority or the Japan travel agency for the best and most up-to-date guidance. For those who want to start a travel agency in Japan, we have a video about starting a travel agency in Japan, as well as the current situation of the tourism industry in Japan as well. You can check that out in the video card here or in the description down below. Next, let's take a look at the process of obtaining a transportation business license in Japan. This license is essential for business involved in freight or passenger transportation business. So let's take a look. So first, before you apply, there are some key steps that you need to complete first. First is to secure a facility. You need an office, a rest area for your drivers, sufficient parking spaces for your vehicles, and they must also comply with their separate legal requirements. You also need to acquire the vehicle for your transportation business, as well as recruit the necessary personnel and funds. Next, you need to prepare the document for your transportation license. This will typically take a month. You need to collect and complete a business license application form and a comprehensive business plan. You can use the one when you are incorporating your business, details about your vehicle operation management system, a driver qualification plan outlining training and safety compliance, information on funding sources and procurement methods, bank balance certificates to demonstrate your financial stability, facilities overview and location details for offices, rest areas and parking, and legal compliance declaration form to adhere to transportation regulations. Make sure all documents are accurate and complete to avoid delays during the review. Next, submit the application to the Transportation Bureau. This is a lengthy process that will take about 5 months. Once your application is approved, you will obtain your general cargo automobile transportation business license, pay the registration fee and license taxes required, submit the notification for the appointment of your operation and maintenance managers to the Transportation Bureau, file a pre-operation confirmation report with the Transportation Bureau as well, and make sure all your vehicles are registered to be used for your business. Is this a complicated process? Yes, it is. We strongly recommend you to find an expert to handle this on your behalf, as this process is very time consuming and typically takes around 6 months to even a year. Let's now explore the process of obtaining a real estate license in Japan. This is essential for business that's involved in buying, selling, or brokering real estate transactions. So here's what you need to know. Before applying, you need to complete some essential steps. You need to secure an office space that meets the normal regulatory standards for a real estate business or just business in general. You also need to hire or designate a licensed real estate transaction manager. This person will be legally required to oversee all your transactions. You also need to prepare a business security deposit. This deposit is there to safeguard against potential liabilities, though you can join a All Japan Real Estate Association and Real Estate Guarantee Association to be exempt from this requirement. Next, you will prepare your document. Collect and prepare the necessary documentation that includes your license application form, a list of advisors, consultants, and shareholders holding more than 5% of your shares, identification documents for executives and key personnel, a certificate for non-registration, a residence certificate or for the representative if you're applying as an individual, resume for executives and key personnel, the certificate, real estate transaction manager appointment certificate, a list of employees engaged in real estate transactions, a photo attached forms for certified real estate transaction manager, a company registration certificate, any real estate business history if applicable. You will also need to include a tax payment certificate, as well as photographs of the office space as well. Once you have all the documents prepared, submit them to the local government and make sure your application is complete to avoid delays during the review process. Once your application is approved, a postcard notifying your issuance of license will be sent to your office address. You have to prepare your security deposit or join one of the association to waive this security deposit requirement. The entire process from application to submission to license issuance typically takes around 2 weeks to a month, but the preparation time may vary depending on the complexity of your application. So allow ample time for you to gather and organize your documents to make sure you have a smooth application process. It is, again, a very complicated process, so we strongly recommend finding an expert to handle the application on your behalf. Finally, let's discuss the process of obtaining an alcohol sales license in Japan. So if you are opening a bar, restaurant, retail shop, or even an online platform selling alcohol, this license is mandatory to legally sell liquor. So here's how the process works. Start by contacting your local tax office and speaking with an alcohol tax officer. They'll give you initial guidance tailored to your business type as well as your location. This is essential to understand the specific requirements for your application for your local area. But in general, you have to prepare the necessary documents as well, which typically include a complete liquor sales license application form, a business plan and overview outlining your operations, financial documents that include your corporation's 3 years of financial statements. If you are an individual, you must submit 3 years of income and expenditure statement. You will also need a certificate of residence or for individual, or a company registration certificate if you are a corporation. Tax payment for certificates confirming your compliance and with tax obligation is also required, with a written pledge affirming to the adherence to your license requirements. You also need a floor plans or equipment layout diagrams for your premises if you are selling in a physical location, lease contract as well if that's applicable. You sometimes would also need to be required to provide a land or building registration certificate for your business location. Some local tax office will require additional documents, so make sure to check with your local tax office for the most accurate requirements for your location. Next, you'll submit your application to the local tax office and pay the registration and license tax, basically formalize your eligibility to receive your license. After that, you will receive your license issuance after they have reviewed your application, and you have to display the license prominently at your place of business as is a legal requirement. As before, this process will feel overwhelming, so be sure to consult with an expert first or your local alcohol tax officer to make sure you understand the requirements and what it takes to apply for a license. Another thing to note is that this process can take up to 2 months, so it's advisable to start well in advance of your planned business opening date if you have a brick and mortar business. Finally, let's take a closer look at the costs associated with obtaining a business licenses and permits in Japan. Each licenses or permits has specific fees that vary depending on the type of business and the scope of your operation. Here's a quick breakdown of the typical cost. For food and beverage permits, this will cost around 16,000 to 25,000 yen, depending on the size and nature of your business, which will cover the review and application process. For travel agency, this depends on your type of travel agency. Type 1 travel agency will require a fee of 90,000. For Type 2, 3, and regional travel agencies, these have a smaller operation scope, which have a registration fee from 20,000 yen to 25,000 yen. For transportation service permits, the application fee is 120,000 yen, which is payable upon submission. This fee covers your review of the facility, vehicles, as well as your compliance with safety regulation. They will send a safety officer to your location. For real estate licenses, the cost for obtaining a real estate license business is approximately 90,000 yen, which includes the review process of your financial documentation and your office setup. Finally, the alcohol sales license will range from 30,000 to 50,000 yen, depending on the type of alcohol you will sell and what is the sales method, whether it's retail, wholesale, or online. One thing to note is that this fee only includes the application itself and do not include additional expenses such as preparation for your documentation, your facility setup, any potential deposit for specific licenses. So plan your budget carefully according to the specific license you are going for. And that is the end of our video. As we have explored in the previous slides, obtaining the right business license and permits is a crucial step for starting a business in Japan. And some of the license will require you to incorporate in Japan as well. This is something that we can help with. Whether you are starting a restaurant, travel agency, or transportation company, or even real estate or alcohol sales, we can make this process easier for you. Provide end-to-end native English support for everything from incorporation documents to handling your tax, labor, and your license registration and application. If you're living overseas, we'll also handle the preparation necessary for you to get a business manager visa and help you relocate and manage your business in Japan. The license application process and incorporation process can be complicated, but it doesn't have to be. With the right people behind the wheel, you can focus on growing your business in Japan while someone handles all your paperwork for you. Book a free 30-minute consultation with us to discuss your business goals and industry-specific licensing or permits requirement at smartstartjapan.com. And thank you for watching. If you want to know more about how to set up a business in Japan, check out the video in the description down below.